Welcome to Too Late Who Gives a Shit, a show in which I pathetically turn in game impressions months after media coverage has cratered, and insult your intelligence by talking as if you've never heard of damn Mario before. Mario had fairly dramatic evolutions between entries in the 2D days, but once New Super Mario Bros. Arrived, the look, sound, and feel were codified and barely budged from one hardware generation to the next. They turned the knob to bland and ripped it off. Mario Maker turned out to be a blessing for the series and provided the raw creativity the official games long hadn't, prompting arguments about whether new games were even needed anymore, something Nintendo's own developers couldn't fail to take notice of. Post-Mario Maker, any new side-scroller necessarily had to be developed with very different and much more ambitious standards, and Nintendo fully rose to that challenge. I see what I consider to be Mario Maker hallmarks everywhere and wonder: bullet hell flying stages, spiky obstacle gauntlets, and highly scripted platform rides, all of which the kind of stages fans like me churned out in droves. But Nintendo pushed far beyond the scope of what Mario Maker's toolset ever could have allowed for with the Wonder Flower mechanic. The goal was to make every level distinct by using unique gimmicks to transform the stages, and from stampedes to time warps, floods, plant musicals, and Mario transforming into a whole menagerie of weird shit, players are spoiled for variety. Ideas occasionally get used twice, but there's so much room to explore the new mechanics that nothing ever gets run into the ground. And the flowers are far from the only risk Nintendo took. An almost entirely new cast of enemies is used with great results. There are deflating balloons, popcorn kernels, barrier-destroying Roman candles, and Langoliers, to name a few.
Good lord! Oh no!
With levels built to take clever advantage of their behavior. Classic Mario enemies are still around, but only in a supporting role, and honestly, if they'd been completely left out, I'm not sure I'd have missed them. Stages are also designed around some of the most interesting power-up additions in decades, like a drill hat that allows attacking enemies from underneath and bypassing objects and traveling on the ceiling. Elephant Mario was the most heavily promoted one, and for good reason. It's far more effective at side attacks than the Tanuki or Cape, and its water spraying and heavy lifting mechanics lend themselves to a lot of secrets. It even does the Yoshi Bongo thing of changing the soundtrack while it's active. But the powering up goes further than just power-ups. You can also equip badges that essentially customize Mario's moveset. If you want the squat jump from Mario 2, or more exploitable wall jumping, or a mid-air spin boost, the main class of badges is extremely useful for that. There's a second class of badges aimed more at beginners, with options for bouncing out of pits or starting each stage with a mushroom. The final class is for the hardcore players who just want to watch the world burn. Badges that cause Mario to always bolt at full speed, or constantly bounce, or disappear completely, tend to do nothing but make levels much harder, but in terms of replay value, they add a layer of Kaizo-like challenge to old stages. Only one can be equipped at a time, but the game considerately gives you a chance to swap after each death, which makes experimenting appealing and easy to do. This kind of innovation with power-ups and physics is normally only seen in 3D Mario, so it's not much of a surprise that 3D team members were on the staff this time. There was also a more generous time budget than normal, and it's also unsurprising that giving a game more time in the oven makes it more gooderer. The 2.5D plainness of New Super Mario Bros. Isn't completely eradicated, but the visuals are much more elaborate and stylish this time. The lighting system ties your character and backgrounds together with real-time shadows now. The use of cartoon line art for facial expressions is especially charming, and gets a step closer to my dream style of making the old instruction manual art playable. The developers specifically allocated extra time for the animations to hold up well against the Mario movie, and a lot of them were unmistakably modeled after Super Mario World and 3. There's a lot of nostalgia for the old games in Wonder, but it doesn't feel like the team is making cheap references. It's more that they've built a comprehensive style that brings all the best elements of the past games forward. It also seems to take cues from Retro's Donkey Kong games, with silhouette levels and a lot of use of the foreground and background planes. I'd still say Tropical Freeze is a better looking example of modern 2D, but the fact that Wonder is closing the gap at all is worthy of celebration. The world themes also show more imagination and don't rigidly stick to the fire, water, and ice tropes. And when a standard trope does appear, it's presented differently than usual. The desert world is actually more of a palace this time, with levels hidden behind walls and heat mirages, while the lava world is a tangled cave system. The map allows free roaming in some areas while forcing you to a rail in others, selectively allowing non-linear choices for small level batches at a time. Some entire worlds can even be tackled out of order, and as soon as that opportunity came up, I made a beeline to knock out the lava world first. The idea of a Mario game not ending in fire levels was too refreshing to pass up. The game also eases off the tradition of boss castles. Some worlds end in a different kind of challenge, or just end, period. I welcome the more flexible formula, but with fewer boss fights it really sucks that all of them are just Baby Bowser, getting jumped on 3 times. Amidst all the creativity flowing through the rest of the game, it's jarring how basic and repetitive these fights are, like the developers were exhausted from the rest and finally just drew a blank. The special world exits also feel like they could have used a little more attention. There are a lot of great alternative exits to find, especially given how the Wonder Flower transformations upend all the rules of a level. Finding a way to bypass the normal flagpole and enter secret territory is always fun, but occasionally a special world is uncovered through something very lame, like just replaying a gift house a second time. It's a wasted opportunity to add more of those clever exits, or to make better use of the expert badges. It's kind of shocking that there aren't more secrets that depend on those abilities. I would guess the developers wanted to leave a few easy ways into Special World for less skilled players, but considering that its stages are all max difficulty, that wouldn't make any sense. Stages now list their challenge on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, and most 5s are reserved for the bonus world. It's where the level designs become the most experimental and dangerous, not unlike the equivalent section in Super Mario World. But it's not the only source of tougher levels. Modern Mario games tend to be relaxed until a few last secret stages, where the difficulty goes absolutely bonkers. Wonder has its own all-time tough finale, but it also has a lot of 4-star courses dotting the entire world, allowing a more consistent feed of harder levels, which beginners can easily avoid thanks to the non-linear maps. I'd almost liken it to how the TVMA rating allowed shows to get away with F-bombs and more on cable, and to keep novice players moving forward, low challenge levels have been increased as well. Some of these are just 20-second bursts that can be cleared by jumping a few times, but even for a hardcore player they can serve as nice breaks. Wonder Seeds can also be purchased at shops in the event that a player isn't able to clear enough levels on their own. Nintendo is always trying to get all players across the finish line, and I prefer this more dynamic rating system approach compared to them just blanket nerfing every level while placating experienced players with one huge spike at the end. It does feel like the system is better balanced for single player than multiplayer though. On one hand, they've removed the collision and accidental throwing that led to chaos and countless deaths in the previous games. On the other hand, the complicated levels and set pieces create more than enough chaos to make up for it. You really have to coordinate with the other players and move together as a team to clear levels this time, and some of the Wonder transformations just don't lend themselves well to multiple players sharing one screen. The Bowser fights are even more of a joke when played this way, ending in no time at all when more jumpers are available to land on him. Multiplayer is still a lot of fun, but it's a different and less even experience than New Super Mario Bros., where you only had to worry about running and jumping and maybe your friends chucking you down a pit. They did try to compensate for the disorder by adding invincible characters to the roster, which is ideal for the players that are always getting left in the dust by some asshole speeding through the courses without them. Guess which of those I am. They've also allowed more control options than normal, most notably letting you change how to ground pound. Moving it to ZL helps prevent unwanted stomps if you have a wonky Pro Controller D-pad. HD rumble intensity can also be set, and I wish more games let you crank it up higher like this.
You can even tell the number of ice cubes in the glass.
The weak support for the feature was a consistent disappointment throughout the Switch's lifespan, but at least the haptics are going out with a bang here. The rare speaker function is even used. The new flower commentator can also be adjusted, which I appreciated because the English voice was immediately annoying.
What a beautiful day!
I switched it to Japanese and actually came to like the feature a lot. It's not a weeb thing. The tone just fits better.
It's me, Mario!
And on the subject of voices, Charles Martinet's departure is pretty hard to miss. Nintendo fired him after he was arrested for assaulting Illumination staff and vandalizing the studio lot, as captured in this exclusively obtained real leaked footage.
You wanna fuck with Wario, motherfucker?
The new actor doesn't always sound like Martinet, but I think it's better that he's able to put his own spin on things instead of directly copying the old voice. Mario sounds younger and a little mellower now, and I think the actor did a pretty good job.
Wonderful! Oh no!
His Luigi is more noticeably off the mark though.
Yippee! Yeah! Alright! Oh yeah!
And it highlights how hard it must be to replace an actor whose tentacles had coiled all around this series. Martinet had an incredible run and it's sad to see him go, but it's also really interesting to see where things will go from here. One last note is that the slight online integration is paywalled. It's nothing major. You can leave cardboard standees to mark where you've been, or help struggling players that you happen upon. It's just the kind of thing that Miiverse offered to all players for free in the past, and it's depressing that even this is gated by Switch Online membership. It's small and easily ignored, but I still insist on bitching about it. Mario Wonder makes me think of the old gag of a hose underfoot, building up a huge blast of water, and wow, he's really going for it. Like a pent-up hose, the creative spark 2D Mario had been lacking for generations has come roaring back in this game. My childhood bias forces me to think Super Mario World is still the best, but Wonder is really challenging its place at the top. If this game had better bosses and more elaborate secret exits, it might have been enough to sway me over to it. I suppose this review is mostly relevant to those of you who tuned out of the series due to new Super Mario Bros. Fatigue. If you lost interest somewhere between the DS and Wii U and didn't pay much attention to Wonder at release, it's definitely time to check back in. Mario is weird again.
I'm tired.